Denver football after dark. Way after dark. Deep into the night here. So late it's early. Assessing the Broncos' progress after 1 week of training camp. It's been 1 week since we looked at them. We've seen them in pads now for 5 days. Where do they stand? What do we know now that we didn't know before? Maybe some things are more muddled now, even. Running back, perhaps. At least not at the top, but maybe down below. Because the game looks like it's afoot at running back behind R.J. Harvey and J.K. Dobbins. Things are clear for those two guys there in the picture, Bo Nix and Sean Payton, to be certain. Things are very clear for Sean Payton and Bo Nix, I would say. For Bo Nix, of course, on Saturday, it was very nearly a big day. I mean, he did have an interception. It got better through the day. It nearly closed as a big day. In that last move of the ball period, he guided the Broncos offense downfield and came within an eyelash of a touchdown pass. And Troy Franklin had it in his hands going down the seam and dropped it. That was close but no cigar. I think maybe some people might have viewed the practice differently if that pass had been completed, but I look at it and say, okay, what I saw from Bo Nix was handling pressure really, really well. I look at his day as seeing him step up under duress. I see him climb the pocket. I see him read pressure effectively. I see him get out of the pocket when the need arises. I see him not rattled by pressure, and there was a lot of pressure. Zack Allen, of course, it was his day, his big contract day, and he played, or I should say he practiced like he wanted to show that he was worth every last dime of that $69.5 million guarantee that the Walton Penner Group gave him. I give him credit for that he agrees to the contract and he just wants to show that he's worthy of it. And he did. He brought the thunder. And on this day, he was the best player on the field. And that says a lot because Pat Surtain, Defensive Player of the Year, had a pick. But Zack Allen, if you were saying who's the player of the day, it was Zack Allen. No small feat. Glad they locked Allen up. Yep, it feels pretty good. Feels pretty good. Help, Mase, I can't fall asleep, says human person. Well, I hope my dulcet tones, if we can call them that, can help you fall asleep. Hope we can help you wind down a little bit. Lull you with a little Broncos talk into sleep. I almost opened this show, by the way, with something really strange because for some reason I've got a very old TV theme song in my head. The theme to the Gary Shandling show from the 80s, and the theme song went, "This is the theme to Gary Show, the old opening theme to Gary Show." And I nearly opened by doing a Mase version of it, but I wanted to spare you all that, and I didn't think that would fit the vibe of this here. So I'm not gonna do that. So Anyway, good to see you all here. Are we getting a live show right now? Yes, you are. Sorry it's a little bit late tonight. I had a little bit of writer's block tonight. I was just putting my story together, but I also had other things to do. I had some things to do around my place, dishes, tidying up, laundry, all the stuff that backed up on me during the week. So, things to take care of. So, bear with me. So, anyway, what up? What up, that studio cat? So, anyway, so we're here to kind of assess the Broncos' progress here after 1 week. I mean, I think the obvious thing to say is that they're on course. I mentioned in my stand-up after Saturday's work that one of the three big things that was that the second-year players had a first-rate day. And I did include Troy Franklin in that, even though he had the drop at the end, because he had an earlier touchdown. And we're seeing him stack good days. But it would have been nice to see him put the cherry on the Sunday this week with that touchdown. Now, that being said, seeing him out there with the ones at the end and seeing him get open in that move the ball period with and against the ones, that's a good sign, because one of the things I did mention on earlier Orange and Blue today was that we saw him making plays early in camp, but a lot of these plays were happening against the second team or the third team. So, like, for example, he has that big touchdown early in practice or early in camp from Jarrett Stidham, but, it's against, for example, he's beating, Delarian Turner-Yell or Damari Mathis, pardon me. And it's like, okay, let's see him do it against bigger competition. He has a touchdown in one-on-one against Jahdae Barron, and Barron is still a backup first-round pick, but Barron's on his hip. It's tight coverage. It's great coverage by Jahdae Barron. That's a step up. Like, okay, he's making a big play. Coverage is great against a guy who's going to be playing meaningful snaps. Now we're stepping up in class a bit. And now you see him against the ones in a move of the ball. He gets open. It's just in his hands. It was so close. I mean, you want to see I try not to root for teams. You have to keep some emotional distance, at least in my role. What I do hope for is for players to make progress. I feel sort of like a little bit like a Ted Lasso thing. You want to see them be the best versions of themselves that they can be. And so I want to see Troy Franklin be the best version of himself that he can be. And so when you see the ball in his hands and he gets open, you want to see him catch it. And then when it's off his hands, you feel for him in that moment. Because I want to, the whole thing, I want to see him be the best Troy Franklin that he can be on the field. And that means I want to see him catch that ball. So it was a little tough. You ache for him in that moment because he's making those strides. You can see that progress. You can see that the work he's put in over the offseason, it's starting to pay dividends, and you want it to pay a dividend there. And you hope that, that the progress he's made, it continues next week, and he keeps getting those opportunities. But it's also a day where you see Pat Bryant making some plays. It's also a day where Devaughn Vele, another second-year guy, to kind of come back to that theme, another second-year guy is making first-rate plays. I thought Saturday was the best day for Devaughn Vele. Vele's had a good camp, but a quiet camp. We've seen more splash moments from Devaughn Vele, we've seen more splash moments from Troy Franklin than Devaughn Vele. And I think Pat Bryant being a rookie and getting attention, he's gotten a little more pub than Vele. So Vele's flown under the radar, but he's quietly he's quietly made plays, but they've been more kind of short underneath, move the chains, get open on that 7-yard slant, that sort of thing. Today we saw a little more of him going across the middle. We saw him, or I should say Saturday, because now we're in the Sunday. We saw him taking advantage of opportunities. We saw him consistently getting open, just taking a step forward. The battle for that number 3 receiver position is really, it's turning into one of the best of training camp. Courtland Sutton's got his role. Marvin Mims Jr. has got his role. I think those two have their jobs pretty securely defined in this passing game. Now it's a matter of who ends up sliding in elsewhere. Who's going to be the primary third receiver? Is it going to be Vele, Bryant, or Franklin? They all bring something different. Certainly, Franklin, it has more speed, is more dynamic. I think Vele is the steadiest. Pat Bryant might be the most intriguing. Pat Bryant might be the guy that you want out there perhaps close and late. I mean, I know this is a little bit off the chain. It's not really analytic, but one of the things that jumps out from his Illinois production is how well he did close and late when Illinois needed the big catch in the last few years. The big reception down the stretch in a game. Far more often than not, it was Pat Bryant getting the ball. And there's something to that. So that's something to consider as well. Victory Lap says it well. Mr. Consistency, yeah. In other words, another comp like Tim Patrick, going back to the original comp on Devaughn Vele when he got drafted, when Sean Payton made the Tim Patrick comp. What was Tim Patrick? Consistent. He was the steady Eddie until the injury struck. But with Timmy Pats, you knew what you were getting. So, Denver football after dark here, deep into the night, Saturday night into Sunday morning. Mims, like I said, Mims is your number 2. I don't call him a gadget guy. He's someone that's going to work inside. Sometimes he's going to be outside, but if you have someone, maybe if you want to call him a slot, fine. He's going to be somebody that you're bringing on end arounds. You're going to get him the ball in the backfield from time to time. He's not a traditional second wide receiver. That's okay. But in terms of if we're defining wide receiver 1, 2, 3 by how often they're used, by frequency of use, Mims is going to be 2. Courtland Sutton's going to get the ball most often in all likelihood over the course of the season, assuming he stays healthy. And then Mims, I think, factors in number 2, and then somebody else factors in number 3. If the Broncos have a plan and it goes according to plan, that's how this thing's going to shake out. And that's how it should. Courtland Sutton, you just paid him. He's Bo Nix's security blanket. He's the guy that Bo trusts. They have chemistry. That's what you're paying him to be. Marvin Mims Jr., he's dynamic, has speed. They're adding to his menu. He has more branches on his route tree now. You could do more things with him. You've built his confidence. It's ever expanding. And he can change a game. And as a compliment to Courtland Sutton, brings incredible value. He's going to open things up for Court, quite frankly, because every opposing defense has to take account of where Marvin Mims Jr. is at all times, because he can break your back. Like the home run threat, you always have to be on alert for where that guy is. So all of a sudden, that means the safety's thinking about Marvin. And if that means Court's getting one-on-one, we know what that means. We know that can mean a jump ball, and we know what Court's like on 50-50 balls. That's always that's always something you like his chances of winning. So Aaron asks, how did RJ do during the scrimmage today? Okay, I will say this. The fact that the front seven brought it today, he did not have much room to roam. I mean, there's one play I'm thinking of in particular where D'Andrea Tillman just closed a hole fast and engulfed RJ. And there wasn't a lot that he could do there. Just a great play by Tillman. It seemed like the entire front seven played as though they were shot out of cannons. Zack Allen led the way. Everyone seemed to follow. These last 2 days, I think, showed just how scary this D could be. And showing it without Dre Greenlaw out there and without Alex Singleton out there in team, I think that's telling as well. That's really exciting. I'm encouraged by Lavelle Bailey and what he brings depth-wise. He really has made a leap. Now, I think you feel pretty confident if he has to come in. His instincts are manifesting. He's in the right place, which shows you he's learned how to read plays as they develop. He's reacting faster, and so that's allowing his instincts to come to the fore. And he's a good natural hitter. That's perfect. With Drew Sanders on the shelf for a while, it looks like Lavelle Bailey is probably going to be the primary backup for the short and potentially long term behind Alex Singleton and Dre Greenlaw. And right now, I think the Broncos are comfortable with that based on what they've seen from Lavelle Bailey. I think they're okay with that. But to go back to D'Andrea Tillman coming in and making that play on RJ Harvey when he took the handoff from Bo Nix, one of the things that you do like is that you've got two backup edges now in Tillman and Jonah Ellis. And Jonah Ellis has had a marvelous week. Ellis, I think this is the week that really he made a leap. The pads went on, and he launched too. He had one definite sack, one I gave him credit for a sack. You could kind of say it was borderline. He had a couple of great plays against the run. Tillman had multiple pressures. These two right now look like the best set of backup edges the Broncos have had since the salad days of Shaq Barrett and Shane Ray. And what that means is if the Broncos want to rotate liberally and keep Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito fresh, they can. They don't have to wear the two starters out. They can bring Ellis and Tillman in, and with their fresh legs, they shouldn't have all that much of a drop-off. Okay, there are reasons why they're backups and not the starters, so they're talent-wise, I mean, there is a little bit of a drop-off, but you compensate for that by their legs being fresher. So if you have, say, a 65-35 snap split, the fresh legs are making up for it. You feel pretty good about that. But you have great depth at those extraordinarily important edge spots. I mean, this is great. Savion Jones on the defensive line had a good day today. Eni Awazarike is starting to play well. He's been rotating in, getting some first-team snaps up front. He's starting to look promising now. He's turning a corner. This is some of the guys that the Broncos have been patient with are really bringing it out there on the practice field, and they really started to bring it when the pads went on. That's thinking of like a Jonah Ellis, for whom the rookie season was kind of up and down, and ended with the injury against Buffalo. And this week I thought was his best week. And Eni Awazarike, certainly he had the year that he missed with the gambling suspension, and then last year, of course, was inactive most of the year, really just trying to get back in the groove, and then he comes in this year and he's very much on the bubble. It might be him and Jordan Jackson battling for a spot, and Jordan Jackson's flashed as well. He looks bigger and stronger out there, but Awazarike has been terrific. So that's another position where the Broncos might have a tough choice between Jackson and Awazarike for one spot. Like this is looking like a really deep team, man. Victory says, I can't remember when we were the last time we were this deep. Well, I can. It was Super Bowl year. It's been a minute. It's been a decade, right? It's been a while. Is Q hurt? Everyone was talking about him OTAs, but I've heard nothing in camp. Yeah, he is hurt. He's got a knee bruise, according to Sean Payton. He's wearing a big brace on his knee right now. So he's out there watching practice, but not playing, not taking part in practice. So we'll see when he gets back out there. So right now, just going to sit and wait. Means you're seeing a lot from Andrew Farmer. That's a guy who's actually flashed as well. Andrew Farmer looks like a guy who's probably going to stick on the practice squad, especially now with Johnny Walker Jr. on IR. With Q Robinson out, Johnny Walker Jr. out of the mix, Farmer's getting a lot of chances. I had him logged with multiple pressures today as well. So, yeah, unfortunate break for Q Robinson as well. But, hopefully he'll get back out there at some point. But it will be interesting to see kind of where things factor roster-wise for him. I've still got him on the 53. And certainly if it's a bruise, you figure he should be back soon. But, we'll see, right? It seemed like there was a chance that, okay, maybe he could challenge for one of those backup spots. Perhaps the way he was playing in OTAs and minicamp. But I think right now you can basically put Tillman and Jonah Ellis there, barring injury. I always have to say barring injury. I think you can put those two in Sharpie as your backup edges. And I'm not sure there's a better pair of backup edges in the NFL than Tillman and Ellis. I don't say that lightly. Jonah Ellis looks like a starting caliber player. George Payton offhandedly said in Palm Beach, hey, he could make, maybe he could make a leap like Nick Bonito did. I think we're starting to see that. And D'Andrea Tillman, he, in terms of hit rate and sack rate, he was a top 20 edge last year on a per pass rush snap basis, according to the Pro Football Focus data. So he was very efficient in terms of making the most of the snaps he got. And we are seeing that again. We saw it in OTAs and minicamp, and we're seeing it when the pads are on. And I'm encouraged by the fact that he dropped some weight to get faster, and yet I see him today making plays against the run. So he's dropped weight, but he hasn't lost anything in terms of what he does against the run. That's really encouraging for D'Andrea Tillman as well. That's exciting. Ellis's brother. Well, Jonah Ellis is, he's Ellis's brother. Yeah, and of course he's Luther Ellis's son. Luther Ellis, longtime Detroit Lion, also a Denver Bronco toward the end of his career, and Luther Ellis then later a Broncos team chaplain when they won Super Bowl 50. So Luther Ellis has a Super Bowl ring from Super Bowl 50, and now he is an assistant coach at the University of Utah, where he coached Jonah Ellis as well. So Ellis family very big in football circles as well. So, Cody, I hope you're having a great night. I am having a great night. Thank you, Cody. And I love the D line and edge rusher depth too. And think about how they've put together the D line and edge rusher depth. I mean, the D line depth. We're talking about Awazarike. It's taken a minute, but he's flashing. That's a mid-round pick. Savion Jones had a couple of plays on Saturday. That's a late third-round pick. Jordan Jackson had a solid rotational season last year. He was undrafted. You go to edge. Jonah Ellis, a third-round pick. Q Robinson was flashing before he got hurt. Fourth-round pick. You've got Dondrea Tillman. Pulled him out of the UFL, and I mean, he took the back way. Like he was, if you watch the interview over at the Denver Sports YouTube channel that I have with him, and I encourage you to do that, he talked about how he had to go play in the spring league, and his grandmother had to front the money to get him in that league, $2,500 that his grandmother gave him to give him a shot to get to play pro football. Think about that for a moment. That his grandma gave him the money to give him a chance that no NFL team would to get his foot in the door. And he went there, and then he parlayed that into the UFL, and he parlayed that into a training camp shot with the Broncos, and here he is. Second year in the NFL. We're talking about him being a guy who's in Sharpie on the roster right now, and all the possibility in the world in front of him. I love stories like that. I'm gonna just forgive me for getting a little for just expounding here, but in my background, way back when I was in college, I was doing work covering and then for a season working with an arena football league team, like doing like PR and stuff, and working in the background, that kind of thing. But there were a lot of other things I did, like putting the sodas and the waters in the referee's locker room and that sort of thing. But I mean, I have a deep respect for the guys that kind of came through minor leagues and the back roads and that sort of thing, because I've been around players like that were, on the fringes. Like, I mean, because that's why I love the Kurt Warner story. Because, of course, I remember watching Kurt Warner in the Arena League. Because back then, that's when I was around the Arena League. So, like, Tillman's story is one that I understand and I appreciate, and it's why I look at the UFL and I'm like, yeah, there is talent there. There are guys in that league that can play. Just take a look and do some digging. Anyway, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I hope. By the way, I hope I helped the person earlier fall asleep. I don't know if I did, because now I'm getting all riled up and passionate about minor football leagues and so forth, and I'm getting going here. So I can't help myself. Troy asking, how does PJ look after the back surgery as we make the team? They can, yes, you're right, Troy. They can get back $4+ million of cap space if he doesn't make it. And I agree with you. You say he's too valuable as a backup. And I agree on this. He has extreme value as a backup because you do have that starter in Talanoa Hufanga, who had the ACL injury 2 years ago, who had injuries last year. And I get a bit nervous about the idea of going into the season without having a backup safety who you know could step in and play at a starting level. Locks looked okay out there, not spectacular, but that's fine. You're not asking for spectacular. You're asking for somebody who knows what they're doing, and PJ knows what he's doing. That being said, how many times have we heard, at least twice, once in OTAs and once during training camp, Sean Payton says that the backup spots at safety are going to be determined by special teams. The question is how many backup spots? Because if you're talking about all backup spots, well, PJ Locke does have special teams in his background, but is that something that's he's kind of moved beyond? And we're talking about him not doing that anymore and other safeties doing that. If that's the case, then maybe that puts him on the bubble. If all backup safeties must be special teamers. Now, if they're willing to live with PJ Locke not having the special teams role that he had earlier, especially coming off spinal fusion surgery, then I think he sticks. That's going to be one to watch. That's something that could be interesting as it comes down to cuts. Like Adam Troutman said, it's a cutthroat league. That's just the way it is. And I mean, I wouldn't put it past the Broncos cutting him. I mean, it hurts, but that's just what happens sometimes. But I would be a little bit nervous about not having an experienced starting safety back there behind Hufanga and Brandon Jones. I always say you should have one reserve at every position group that if they had to start, you feel secure with. Ideally with a reasonable amount of starting experience in that position group. So you want one interior offensive lineman, one tackle, one tight end, one receiver, etc. One safety, and that's PJ. That's, if I'm constructing a team, that's kind of how I do it. And sometimes it doesn't have to be a player with that experience, just someone who has that capability. Like, for example, your cornerback could be Jahdae Barron if you regard him as your number 4 right now, but you know he's going to start at some point down the line. You drafted him to do that. It may not happen immediately, but it's going to happen at some point, whether it's slot corner, outside, wherever. Eventually he ends up playing starters reps, even if it doesn't happen right away. So you always have one guy that you say, okay, they can come in and play. Barron's days have been getting better, by the way. He's been finding his footing, finding his confidence the last couple of days, the last 3-4 days as well. So that's another positive sign that you're seeing from him as well as camp goes on. So, Big E, would you trade Nick Bonito to Green Bay for Isaiah Simmons and draft picks to give Jonah Ellis a chance to see where he can develop? I'd not be inclined to do that, no. If you're a team with Super Bowl aspirations this year, that's not a move you're making to trade Nick Bonito. Now, obviously, you've got the contracts done. So, on the one hand, you'd say, okay, Nick Bonito's next. But I don't necessarily think that's imminent. I think this one is going to be letting it play out. Think on both sides, letting it play out. Bonito wanting to see kind of where his value goes if he stacks another season like the one he had. And even the Broncos knowing, hey, we've got Jonah Ellis here. The other thing, of course, now that you've got Zack Allen done, you have the franchise tag in your back pocket. Allen is done. With Allen, if you'd had Allen and Bonito and neither one of them was done, you could have used the tag on one but not the other. Now Allen's complete, so if you don't get something done with Bonito, if all else fails, you can give him a tag. It's not what you want to do, but it's there. So bear that in mind. That tag would be in the neighborhood of $27 million, I believe, for an outside linebacker. So that would be a pretty reasonable cost for edge rushers of that ilk. So just bear that in mind as you go through this. I mean, frankly, if you look at having Jonah, having Q Robinson even, and wanting to see where he goes, and having Andrea Tillman, I mean, it may not be the best thing for feelings, but the tag may not be the worst thing in terms of like what would be a prudent move. Anyway, something to think about here. But I would not trade. I would not. I mean, I respect where you're coming from on that suggestion, Big E, and I know it's one of the things that's going to float out there. I'm sure. I know there are some people in the social media sphere saying, "Hey, what about a trade involving Nick Bonito and Micah Parsons?" I want to shoot that idea down because it would be Nick Bonito and draft capital to get Micah Parsons, who would probably have a contract that would have an otherworldly cap figure and sacrifice draft capital. I don't think that's something the Broncos necessarily want to do. I think they're going about this the right way. I mean, right now, that Pat Surtain contract is looking like a bargain. This is another thing about the Broncos getting these things done a little bit ahead, which is why if Nick Bonito isn't done in the next, say, 1 to 2 months, then it really becomes interesting to think, okay, is it going to be a tag to kind of just see where things go in another year in terms of where these edges, how these edges develop? You know, there's a lot going on here. The other thing, if you're talking about like real cold calculus of roster building, is, okay, with Nick Bonito, we've spent a lot of this show talking about the Broncos' progress and how Tillman and Ellis are among the players shooting up. In other words, your young edges, your second-year edges, are rising. Zack Allen, you've got good interior defensive linemen, but he has, let's just say, he has a more unique skill set. Zack Allen led the league in quarterback hits with 40. And if you took Zack Allen out of the lineup, you're not finding 40 quarterback hits or anywhere close to that from anyone up. You're not replicating Zack Allen in the aggregate from the rest of that interior defensive line. You're just not. You might be able to replicate Nick Bonito in the aggregate from the rest of your edge group. As I go into Moneyball mode here, quoting that. So that is something to consider here when you're evaluating. Another thing, when you're evaluating why Zack Allen is done now and why Bonito is later. Zack Allen, you can argue, has the rarer skill set. There are more edges out there who can do what Nick Bonito does, or do something close to that. than interior defensive linemen who can do what Zack Allen does. Zack Allen's ability to get to the quarterback as a 3-tech, that's rare. And all I need to say to sum it up in one sentence is that the last interior defensive lineman with 40 quarterback hits in a single season was Aaron Donald in 2018. I can distill that scarcity of Zack Allen's skill set down to that one sentence. Nick Bonito is excellent, but the skill set is not as scarce as Zack Allen's. And that's a reason why Zack Allen's contract took a higher priority in terms of the Broncos getting that done. So, it is what it is. Now, could the Broncos get Bonito done here in the next few weeks? Hey, it wouldn't surprise me if they did. And another thing also, give the Broncos credit for this. These things happen quietly. They're not doing them through the media. It's not back and forth. I mean, it's like you wake up one morning and it's done. I mean, literally, I woke up on Saturday morning and on my phone, I see it. And next thing I know, I'm firing off a few data points and recording a video, just breaking it down, and that's it. Like, that's how it works. These things happen. These things happen quietly. Tip of my Richmond Flying Squirrels RVA cap to George Payton, Greg Penner, Kerry Walton Penner, everyone else involved in the Broncos for how they go about these negotiations. Not through the media, no sniping back and forth. These things are done quietly. Exactly, Vic. No leaks. Big E. I remember back in the day, Washington, loading up on all kinds of talented players like Deion Sanders, and it looked great on paper when it came to playing the games, all about me. Yep, that was 2000. I remember it well. They had Deion Sanders. I believe they had Bruce Smith as well. It was one of the many things of Daniel Snyder just doing things wrong. He just wanted all the big names. Daniel Snyder put together a heck of a mid-1990s all-star team there in the year 2000. In the year 2000! I can't quite get the high note. By the way, yeah, people say I've got the in the year 2000 effect. Well, it was the year 2000 that Washington did that. And I believe they came home at 500 and fired Norv Turner before the end of the season. A very disappointing team, one of many disappointing teams there from Washington in those days. Victory lap. We signed Bonito early, we get a discount. Yes, but here's the thing. It takes two to play the game. What if Nick Bonito wants to bet on himself? Don't forget that part of the equation too. If the player wants to bet on himself and thinks that he can get more, so it goes. So, does take two sides to make the deal. Each side does have to give a little bit. Ultimately, if the player and the player's representation says, hey, I'm going to bet on myself that I can push into this lofty territory. Because right now, Nick Bonito isn't getting Myles Garrett, TJ Watt money. nor should he. He's done it 1 year. But he probably knows if he has another season like he had last year, he will push into that territory. Certainly, it would behoove the Broncos if they believe that Bonito is going to have another season like that. It would behoove the Broncos to lock him up right now. But perhaps Bonito may believe, hey, if I have another 13 or 14 sack season, my price tag's going from the mid 20 million to 35, 40 million. So just bear that in mind too. It takes both sides to come together on a deal. And make no mistake, the financial benefits and the type of contract that Bonito would receive if he has another season like he had last year, it would put him into the stratosphere. He would get a contract like TJ Watt or Myles Garrett if he has a season like he had last year, because he would be an edge rusher going into his 5th year right there at prime contract territory, not hitting age 30 like those guys. He'd be going into his 2nd contract. He would break the bank if he has another year like the one he just had. So that is something to know. Just remember that. Another 13 sack season, and he is objectively going to be in stratospheric territory. So, of course, the Broncos would love to get something done now before that price goes up. I don't think there's any doubt. But what if, I'm just spitballing here, what if on Bonito's side it's like, hey, I know that I could go into TJ Watt land contract-wise with another season like that, because he probably would. So, anyway, just a thought. Just bear that in mind. That's how these things work. So, Grass Valley Greg, I want to bet on 2000 missing the playoffs. Yeah, I actually covered a game that year. It was Tampa Bay at Washington, and it was actually Deion Sanders had a punt return in overtime to set up the game-winning field goal. And he compared that punt return to giving birth. Yeah. Deion Sanders, yeah. Never one for hyperbole. Never. Austin, it's 2 a.m. What's happening? The future, Conan? Yes, the future. All the way to the year 2000. Denver football after dark here. I brought a white Surtain jersey today. Super excited for the season. Yeah, the white jerseys are underrated. I mean, the only problem is I'm such a klutz that I just stain them. I'll say this as I'm, some of y'all know I'm an Atlanta Braves fan. I've actually got a white Ronald Acuna Jr. jersey there somewhere elsewhere in my place here in the closet. But the problem is I am a stain magnet, so it's, there's a hot dog ketchup stain on it that I couldn't get out from that's got to be it's from 7 years ago, because I bought it when he was a rookie. That's how confident I was. Normally I'm like, don't buy an active player, buy a past player. But that's how confident I was in Ronald Acuna Jr. I bought the jersey, I think 7 weeks into his career after he got promoted. That's how convinced I was he was going to be a star. So, didn't turn out too badly. He became an MVP. Poor guy just can't stay healthy, though. But boy, he's a special player when he's healthy, man. Yeah, Troy, always buy retired players' jerseys. The white helmets, fire. Okay, so one of the shows this week I'm going to have to pre-record because of travel reasons. Namely that I've got an early morning flight one day, and I plan to be asleep when I'd be doing this. So I'm going to pre-record one of these shows, and it's actually going to focus on the white helmets and the various possibilities of the white helmets. Damani Leash, of course, talking about combos and that sort of thing. So stay tuned for that. I've got thoughts. Y'all know I've got thoughts on uniforms. I have plenty of thoughts. Anyway, Troy, I bought 33 Javonte Williams jersey after his rookie year. What a mistake. Yeah, it's kind of a Shakespearean tragedy mistake, though, because it's not that he wasn't a good player. It's just sad. It's health. It's injuries. It's heartbreaking. Like, what happened to Javonte just kind of crushes you emotionally. Because he was on track, and then on that sad Sunday in Las Vegas, that was it. He got injured. That was a sad Sunday for a lot of reasons. He gets injured. Melvin Gordon comes in, and that's when the fumble problems really exacerbated. I made poor Melvin cry with a follow-up question at the press conference. Gosh. The funny thing is, like, it wasn't personal. We talked, like, the next day. It was fine. It was just, he was in a bad place. Like, he took everything to heart. Like, he did care a lot. I mean, I know his name isn't thought of very well in Broncos country, but man, he did care. And he was just crushed. I think it was, but they had to give him the ball. They had no other options at that point. And it was probably for the best that he ended up getting cut about a month and a half later, because it was in his head by a certain point. So, oh, wow. Oh, thank you, Studio Cat. Appreciate. Oh, yeah, I just realized I had that. Yeah, because I have that turned on now. So thank you. I don't ask for that. But I don't turn it down. So thank you. But yeah, I'm not going to sit there and solicit. I'm not actively soliciting super chats, by the way. So, but I do appreciate the thought. So thank you very much. Very kind of you to appreciate what I'm doing here. C. Chang, for me, I'd buy Broncos t-shirt, but not the jersey. That's fair. Not everyone's a jersey person. I know there are some people that say that after a certain point in life, you shouldn't wear a jersey. You know what? I don't buy that. If you want a jersey, I don't care if you're 50 or 75 or 95, or if you want it, get it. Put a name on it. Who cares? I mean, hopefully I'll be lucky enough to get old. I mean, you never know. I mean, I always say I wasn't born yesterday. I could die tomorrow, but I wasn't born yesterday. But hopefully I'll get old enough to be a 80-year-old wearing a jersey to a baseball game or something like that. I don't know. That'd be nice. Champ Bailey was my last jersey purchase, says Grass Valley Greg. Well, that's a good choice. That's a really good choice, is Champ. No problem there. A lot of people have Champ Bailey. Speaking of Champ Bailey, number 24 still hasn't been issued since the brief time it was brought out of storage for Adam Pac-Man Jones. Other than that, it's been filed away. I do personally think at some point 24 should be formally retired. I make the argument that the standard for a retired jersey should be first ballot Hall of Famer. Now, you can't unretire a jersey. 18 was retired for Frank Tripucka, but you can say, okay, it's retired for Peyton Manning as well, first ballot Hall of Famer. You can't unretire 44 for Floyd Little. That's fine. He's the franchise. But basically, starting from John Elway, to me, a good standard is if you're a first ballot Hall of Famer, primarily for your accomplishments as a Bronco, retire the jersey. So that covers 7. That would cover 24. There's a good chance it would cover 58, which has been out of circulation since the trade in 2021, because I think we all have a pretty good idea that he'll probably be a first ballot Hall of Famer. So if it were up to me, that's the standard. And then if you say first ballot Hall of Famer for their accomplishments as a Bronco to retire a jersey, you take the guesswork out of it. Then it's just it's not subjective. It's completely objective. It's kind of like how at the University of North Carolina with basketball, they have a set of objective standards for being either an honored jersey or a retired jersey. It's not left to any panel. It's just like you got to be National Player of the Year to have like a retired jersey. I think it's fair. I think that's pretty fair. Like to just take all the debate out of it. There's, we have the debate over the Ring of Fame, but a retired jersey, if you just say first ballot Hall of Fame, boom, I think that's the easiest thing. So then it would be 7 and 24. I'm okay with that. But it's the one thing that I just wish that they had not had Jones wear 24. That still bothers me. And I know Champ signed off on it, but he shouldn't have had to. The question should not have even been asked. It should have been like, nope, you're not getting it. 88, by the way, has been out of circulation since Demaryius Thomas's passing. Or actually, it was being worn at the time by a practice squad player, but then the following off season, it was subsequently taken out of circulation. It's not gone back into circulation since then. So I do wonder if and when that'll go back into circulation too. He doesn't beat the first ballot Hall of Fame standard, of course, and he won't be a Hall of Famer. I mean, his CV just does not come close, unfortunately, when you consider the types of receivers who aren't in the Hall of Fame. I mean, Demaryius, his resume is way down there, unfortunately. Just is what it is. But, Stephen B, super late stream, 4:30 from Jersey. Now I'm now waking up. Okay. This is what I mean when I say this was so late, it's early. It comes all the way back around to being early here. Yeah. So, Troy, Champ is on the Mount Rushmore. Broncos legends retired the jersey. Greatest retired corner of all time. By the way, I saw something like, the whole Deion Sanders upper room Hall of Fame thing. And I think it was Pro Football Talk that said, okay, here's the upper room. If they had one, and it did not have Champ Bailey in the upper room, and I thought that was crap. To me, Champ Bailey is an upper room guy. My opinion. It had Darrelle Revis in the upper room and Champ Bailey not in the upper room, and I think that's folderol. Bunk. BS. My opinion. Champ Bailey was at least Darrelle Revis's equal. I would as a technical cover corner, I would take Champ Bailey over Darrelle Revis. And I'm taking my Bronco bias out of it. Part of it is Champ's apex 05, 06. I've never seen a corner play like that. That is the best I've ever seen a cornerback play this game. Was when Champ Bailey was at his peak. Best ever. All due respect to Pat Surtain, as great as he is, Champ was extraordinary. Like, Champ Bailey should have been Defensive Player of the Year at least one of those years. That's the thing that kind of kills me. Like, Pat got the Defensive Player of the Year, and he's the Broncos' first DPOY since Randy Gradishar. He should have been the first DPOY, right, since Champ Bailey. I mean, you could also argue he should have been the first DPOY only since Von Miller. Should have happened for Vaughn. Should have happened for Champ. Broncos have been stiffed on DPOY over the years. I'm not saying Revis was overrated. Unless oh wait, sorry, that's the discussion. See, this is a problem when I just look in the comments and I just kind of, I kind of just swoop in and I just see them like, no, that's the discussion there, my bad. Like, yeah, I don't think, yeah. Revis was excellent. Revis is a Hall of Famer. But to me, to say Revis is in the upper room and Champ isn't in the upper room, I think Mike Florio gets this one wrong. To PS2's credit, it's a bit tougher to play nowadays. Rule changed, but yeah, Champ still higher than he is at the moment. Yeah, it is tougher for PS2. And this is not like downgrade. This is not downplaying PS2. To me, it's saying that Champ deserved that award. It does bother me that Champ didn't get DPOY. That's one they got wrong. I've still never seen a cornerback play 2 seasons or play a season like Champ 05, Champ 06. And that does include PS2 last year. And it's nothing, you know, I'm not a hater or anything like that. And I know some people say, "Oh, you're putting that down." I'm putting him down. I'm not putting him down. That's just how extraordinary Champ Bailey was. Like, and it wasn't just shutting down people. It was the play, like, it was the play when you need it most. It was like, obviously, like, Pat had the pick against the Raiders. That's a moment when the Broncos desperately needed it. Like, the Raiders are about to take a 17-3 lead. Champ does that. He does that against Dallas on Thanksgiving. He does that against the Chargers. I mean, Champ may have saved the season in week 2, and then he possibly saves the season again on Thanksgiving when the Cowboys are threatening to pull away, and Champs basically takes the game and rests it back towards the Broncos and sets up eventually Ron Dane winning it on the gallop in overtime to set up James Nealon's field goal. So, yeah. No QB threw Champ's way because the corner was across from him was not very good, lack of stats. Yet when he took advantage on the rare times they did throw his way. Like, he loved it when he was going against a rookie. I think it was the game in 06 they played the Cardinals, and he was looking forward to that because the Cardinals started Matt Leinart, then a rookie. And he knew that was a chance to get some balls thrown his way because a rookie, he thought, and the late Larry Coyer knew they could set it up and get Leinart to throw in Champ's direction. That, okay, I think the week before they played the Chargers and Phillip Rivers, and even though Rivers was in his first year starting, he was his third year in the league, and Rivers was already savvy enough to, like, you knew, okay, we're not going to get Phil to throw there, but we can get Leinart to throw there. And of course, Leinart did, and there was a pick six, and the Broncos bombed the Cardinals. So, Champ and Boss Bailey, 08. Yep, they played in 08, and Champ was hurt most of the year. And that defense that year was bad. It was 07 and 08 Broncos defenses were dreadful. 09 defense was pretty good for Mike Nolan, and then Mike Nolan couldn't deal with Josh McDaniels and left. And then the 10 defense, Ellis Dumervil got hurt right early in training camp, and that ended his season. And then the 10 defense was the worst of all. Dead last. The 2010 defense was what I like to call the Gandhi defense, passive resistance. And then it got a little better in 2011. Actually, just a little better was all it needed to get in order to get Dennis Allen the Raiders head coaching job after that season. Denver football after dark here. A little longer tonight than the past shows. I guess there's something about Saturday night into Sunday morning that just kind of gets the conversation going. Because I'm looking at this, the chat room on YouTube is popping, impressively so. So appreciate you guys. This is wild. Appreciate the response, by the way, on the YouTube channel in general. I was looking up sort of what makes a good YouTube channel for beginners, and because I'm basically a beginner at the YouTube thing, and it's been pretty overwhelming. So all of you, I thank tremendously for being here. Victory lap. Got a morning shift, but who cares? Yeah. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate all of you being here and keeping me company here as I start to wind down. It's an off day from football on Sunday, but not an off day completely. I'll be over at the Rockies game against the Pirates, catching that, and then also got to do some house cleaning, as it were, on work wise. Like, I don't just write, I don't just do this on camera stuff. When you see the video bits I throw in here, like I'll just show you here. I show, there's the roll that beautiful bean footage of Zack Allen. We'll just show some players here, and Talanoa Hufanga. I'll get this right. Hufanga with a pick. And because I love my punters, there's Jeremy Crawshaw, who had a pretty solid series of punt periods on Saturday. A couple of ones that were sub 4 on the hang time, but I didn't have a good angle to get the distance. But he was all right. Had one that was down inside the 5-yard line. His last punt of the day was his best one. But yeah, I shoot all the video. I shoot photos. I write a couple of stories a day. I do the on-camera stuff. I do all this. But I have to actually take part of the day and go through all the video and photos I've got so I know what I've shot, what more I need to get. Because part of what I do for Denver Sports is shoot photos, so we have a library of photos that we can use for our stories going forward. So we like to make sure we've got 1 or 2 good shots of each player that we can just use. Okay, any player that we need to write a story on, there's a photo in the archive. That's part of what I do as well. Like, and some of the photos we end up using, like this. Like, there's Christian Williams, number 75, undrafted rookie, who had a pass defensed on Saturday. By the way, when he had the play today, or not pass defense, to pressure, pardon. Or it was pass defense, it was pass breakup. It was PBU. And he had that play, and I was standing next to Anthony Rodriguez, who worked on Orange and Blue 760 with me back in the day. So he remembered the 75. And if you listen to Orange and Blue 760 many years ago, you might remember that because that was a line from Steve Atwater's movie called Dead Tone. Yes, Steve Atwater produced a movie, co-produced it along with former Broncos Ray Crockett, Ephraim Salam, and a few others. Ray Crockett actually has a speaking role in that movie called Dead Tone again. And they play this game called 75, which you try to prank call someone and keep them on the phone for 75 seconds. It's a slasher film, so they end up calling the wrong person, and of course slasher things ensue because of it. Steve co-produced it, which meant he gave some money for it. He says he donated money because he never got a dime of it back. We end up watching the film and doing a review of it on the radio one day. Anyhow, there's a line where there's a scene in there where they said, we're going to play a game. And you get the dramatic thing. He slams a speakerphone down, 75. And so every time the number 75 would come on, we'd mention on the show, we would slam our hands down and say 75. And it drove Steve crazy because he got reminded of the film that he co-produced. So Christian Williams, number 75, I turned to my old Orange and Blue 760 cohort, and I said, I really hope Christian Williams sticks in some capacity and makes a play and keeps the number 75 just so I can say that. So anyway, if you listen to Orange and Blue 760 back in the day, that's the little, that is, and you're watching the show at this point, this is for you. So Michael, good late night to you, Michael. Appreciate it. Big E, I enjoy waking up at 3:30 in the morning in West Virginia, which is now 4:30. Get your day started listening about Broncos football. Appreciate you, Big E, in West Virginia. Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. I actually passed through West Virginia ever so briefly last month, by the way. That little part of West Virginia on I-81 that you pass through when you're going from Virginia up through West Virginia, Maryland to Pennsylvania. When I was driving up to Harrisburg, went through West Virginia for about 20 minutes or so. But it was good to be back ever so briefly. We're not getting back to West Virginia this year with the Broncos. Not going to the Greenbrier. With London on the schedule, that's taking the team bonding place of the Greenbrier trip for the Broncos. So no trip to West Virginia. And believe it or not, I'm actually a little bit sad about that. I enjoyed the trip, even though it rained the whole week, even though in the rain and the wind, I had a heck of a white knuckle drive down the mountains coming back down from White Sulphur Springs, winding down I-64 to where it met I-81. It was still a heck of a week. It was memorable. And then, of course, they beat the Jets on that Sunday in the rain. Saw so much rain that week. I love that 75. I do. Bronchology, that's you. Yes. 75. And the funny thing is, Troy, after we started doing it, it was funny how often the number 75 just came up naturally. Like, we weren't even trying. It would just pop up. And that's what drove Steve crazy. It's like it just seemed to come up once every 2 days on the show. That was a fun show. I wish we'd been able to keep doing that. I'll actually just kind of tell you all a story. I had a proposal after that station went under to keep doing the show on the Broncos digital channels, and it was rejected by the person in charge of digital media at the time because they felt it would not get enough engagements on their social and digital channels. Because I wanted to do it like a YouTube show. In retrospect, it was the idea was probably 2 or 3 years ahead of its time. But you know, is what it is. And that was a big part of the reason why I decided, okay, time for me to go on down the road. Because what I wanted to do and what I think they wanted me to do were two different things. So, is what it is. No regrets. But it was sad because I think it would have been fun to keep doing that show, and I think that we had a good digital audience. I think it would have been a bigger digital audience, and certainly that show had a lot of chemistry to it. Myself and Steve and Ryan. So it was fun. It was fun. Good times, and we're all still good friends too. Talk with Ryan pretty much every day out there at training camp. Those that listen to the show would appreciate it. So, Big E is in Huntington, West Virginia, home of the Thundering Herd. Yes, Marshall University. The Thundering Herd. Sun Belt Conference now. Doesn't really make much sense to me, Marshall being in the Sun Belt Conference, but I digress. Big E mentions, whoa, you upgraded the Greenbrier bunker? Oh, man alive. Wow. Okay, I'm like a total nerd for that sort of stuff, like why the bunker was built. Of course, it was designed to house all of Congress, for example, in case there was a nuclear attack. Like, that's one of the craziest things. Pro 16K. If it were up to you, Mase, how would you handle the Greenlaw injury? Very carefully. Metaphorically speaking, I would put that man in bubble wrap and be exceptionally careful and say, let's just be ready for week 1. Come what may. I'd get him all the mental reps you need. He's a pro. He appears to be on the same page with Alex Singleton. They sit next to each other in meetings. Their communication's on point. He's smart. He's learned the system quickly. Trust that, and take care of him physically. Trust his mind, because like I said, smart player. He'll get it. He'll get the system, and then the instincts will take over. So that's why I would just say, take care of him physically and be cautious. How would you evaluate the O-line? We need them to be good if we want to go for a long run. They'll be fine. It's obviously a challenge against this defense, but it's 2 years in a row they've been among the best in win rate, run block, and pass block. They're back together for another year. The broader sample size says this is a good unit. I haven't seen anything to indicate otherwise. So, not concerned. Again, they're trying a lot more wide zone right now. It's something they're working in. I wrote a little bit about this at denversports.com, talking about Zack Allen. Of course, he mentions how he has the liberty to try new things right now at this time of year. I know the offensive line has that same liberty. It's something that Zach Strief empowers his guys to do, to use off-season work and early training camp to try some different things. Certainly, wide zone tactically for the entire offense is part of that, but even technique-wise, individually, to try some different things to expand the repertoire. So it's okay to experiment a bit, figure out new things that might work, new things that won't, and then adapt accordingly. And if you figure out, okay, this is going to be something I can incorporate in my game, this is something I can't. When you figure out what you can't, you ditch it, you move on. So I'm fine where the O-line is. No concerns. If I am concerned with anything, it's with the second team right now and the pre-snap penalties. I'm not concerned with the starting offensive line. I'm concerned with the pre-snap penalties on the number 2 offensive line. So that's where my concern is. They're fixable, but the fact that you had 3 pre-snap penalties on the second offensive line early in practice on Friday, and then later in the practice you had 3 straight false starts, that concerns me. So, anyway. So Biggie asked when I was with the team, did I get to take tour of the bunker? So unfortunately I didn't. Like I was staying down the street. So I covered the practices, but I didn't get to go to the hotel. The team was at the hotel. I didn't go any further in the hotel than like the tennis complex when they had to practice there that day. And then I was at the sports complex, which is kind of across the street where they practice. So I did not get a chance to go to the bunker, unfortunately. So I'd like to actually go back there and stay there at some point, but we'll see. That's something hopefully I can do sometime, because I do get back to the East Coast pretty frequently. I mean, I was actually I was in the Mid-Atlantic just twice in the last 2 months, and my antenna seems to be pointing back in that direction a little more now. So I'll probably knock on whatever surface I can find. Hopefully I'll be back in that part of the country again soon. Actually, I should be back in the Mid-Atlantic. Well, the work will take me there twice this season, so I don't know if I'll get to West Virginia, but I'll be in that neck of the woods twice this year. So anyhow, appreciate you all being here with me on this as this overnight winds through, but I can feel sleep stalking me here as it winds towards 2:50 a.m. in this overnight. So Broncos progress after 1 week, I think it's pretty solid. I talked about some of the second-year guys, talked about Bo Nix, talked about the offensive line, talked about the pass rushers. Jahdae Barron, I mentioned earlier, I think he's done well the last few days after a little bit of a sluggish start. His best days have been his last 3 days. It's okay. I think the team's in good shape. You'd like to get the inside linebackers healthy. You'd like to get Greenlaw back up to speed, but I think you take your time with him. Lavelle Bailey has done very well with the additional playing time. Broncos have interesting competitions at running back behind R.J. Harvey and J.K. Dobbins. Wide receiver 3, those are 2 competitions to watch. Backup safety is fascinating. Special teams will determine that. And I think there are even competitions for like practice squad wide receiver as well. I mean, this roster is filled with fascinating competitions that I think we're going to be able to dive into over the next 3 weeks. So anyhow, appreciate you joining me here on Denver Football After Dark for this overnight Sunday morning. And I know a lot of you are going to watch this throughout the day Sunday. So whenever you watch this live, or as Larry Sanders / Gary Shandling, well, actually, no, it's Hank Kingsley on the Larry Sanders Show would say live on tape, as it were. Appreciate you watching this. If you enjoy it, like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, as they say, so that you don't miss a vid. And I will have more on Monday when the Broncos are back at camp, back for a practice. I'll have my practice wrap here on my YouTube channel and, of course, on all my social media platforms. And then Cecil Lammey and I will have you covered with Orange and Blue Today live at 5 p.m. Monday afternoon to wrap up the day. It's a big week for the Broncos. They have their practice in the San Francisco Bay Area on Thursday, joint practice with the 49ers, and then preseason game number 1 on Saturday at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara. I'll be there for the joint practice. I will be there for the preseason opener as well to take you through all of it. I'll be there also for the preseason games at home against Arizona and then on the road against New Orleans to wrap up the preseason. So every step the Broncos take, I plan to be right there with them. So I'll be there with them, and I'll bring you everything I learn to share with you here on these channels. So appreciate you joining me here in the wee small hours of the morning, wherever you are, or if you're watching during the daylight hours, whenever you're watching. Appreciate you sticking with me here and chatting Broncos, and thanks for joining me here on this edition of Denver Football After Dark. And until next time, take care. Thanks for watching.